Well, hello there. You doing good? I sure hope so. But if not, after today's recipe, I assure you, you're going to be doing a whole lot better. And that is because today I am going to show you how I make my cinnamon rolls. But not any old cinnamon rolls. Oh no. We're going to be making, you ready for it? Brown butter cinnamon rolls. Oh yeah, you heard me, brown butter. And because we're committing to this whole brown butter idea, we're gonna go big or go home. So the brown butter is in 3 parts in this recipe. It's in the dough, it's in the filling, and it's in the frosting. And I'm just going to mention it's delicious because that brown butter addition to a typical cinnamon rolls recipe adds flavor, it adds nuttiness, and it really does add a completely different dimension. So as usual, I am ready to do this thing. I hope you are too. And if I can do it, you can do it too. Let's get started. So we are going to get started on the dough portion of our cinnamon rolls. So for that, we're going to need some flour, sugar, salt, some active dry yeast, some milk. Now this is whole milk or full cream milk, some eggs, and some butter. So first step is adding your dry ingredients together in the flour bowl. So sugar, salt, and yeast. Now I'm adding the yeast and the sugar on separate sides because when these two come into contact with each other, they are not the best of friends. So keep them separate. Mix the salt in first, and then you can mix in your yeast. As long as everything gets incorporated into the flour before the yeast and the salt meets, you're okay. All right, so what we want to do now is get started on our wet ingredients. Now, because this is a brown butter cinnamon roll recipe, we're going to just brown all the butter that we need for the entire recipe. So dough, filling, topping, that kind of thing, all in one go. So you're just browning all your butter at once. So in it goes. So our butter is bubbling along. We want it to get a nice brown color, and what that is going to do, or I should say what browning your butter is going to do, is actually bring out a beautiful deep nutty flavor. So when browning your butter, you want to keep an eye on it because butter can burn. So occasionally move it off the stove if you want, if you find it's getting too hot, and give it like a little bit of a swirl like this. You see how it's already starting to get like brown bits at the bottom and a nice dark color. So this is pretty much ready, I would say. And there we go. We've just browned our butter. So for the dough, we want to reserve about 1/4 cup of that brown butter. But because we're going to add all of this to our wet ingredient bowl, we want that brown butter to just cool down slightly because we're going to be adding eggs in there, and we don't want this hot butter and these eggs to go in because then we're going to have scrambled milky eggs. Not good. So in with the brown butter. And get those little brown bits in there because that has some flavor. And in with our eggs. And give everything a little bit of a whisk to combine. Now we're just going to add our wet ingredients to our dry. And you want to stir to combine and make sure all of that flour and liquid is incorporated. Now, I forgot to mention this in the ingredients list, but pretty much this is our wet ingredients incorporated into our dry. But you kind of need to have just a little bit of water in reserve and add it a bit at a time. You don't want to add all of this water in, just a bit at a time until you see the entire thing come together. So we're just going in here like so, and then stirring to combine. So after that water is incorporated, you're kind of going to get left with a fairly moist, sticky dough. I stuck my fingers in there to show you what it's supposed to look like. You want it to be moist. You don't want this thing to be too dry. But yeah, that's it. You just have to stir the wet ingredients into the dry. And now that everything is incorporated, we're just going to cover this up and let it sit. Okay, so this is what the dough looks like after about 2 hours out on the countertop. It's fairly sticky and it has a nice little network of bubbles going on in there. So the yeast is activated, it's doing its thing. But here's the thing, what we want to do now is just cover this down and put this in the fridge for an overnight rise. Why are we doing this? Well, this is going to allow the flavors to develop further, and it's going to give that yeast time to take its time. So it's just going to slow down that rising process, and it's going to take a longer time in the refrigerator, but the flavor that you're going to get out of a slower rise is going to be phenomenal. Much, much better than a quick rise. Similar to sourdough rising. So it's almost like a little bit of a fermentation process, but not quite fully. But that's what we're going to do. Cover up in the fridge, and we're going to check back on this dough in the morning. So it is the morning after, and I just want to show you what the dough looks like. So there we go, bubbly. It's not as sticky anymore. It's poofy. So it's time to roll this out. So I took the dough out of the bowl, put it on a lightly floured surface. Now just check this out, how awesome this looks. And would you believe that we didn't have to knead this not for a second? This happened all on its own, and that yeast really did its job overnight. So it had a night shift and it did its job. So what I'm going to do now is, with some flour, just a little bit on the top, and we're going to roll this out into a rectangular shape. So these are all the ingredients you're going to need for the filling. So essentially we're going to make just like a bit of a paste, for lack of a better term, with that brown butter that we did yesterday, some sugar and some cinnamon. Now the brown butter, I kept this in the refrigerator overnight, but what we want to do is just take some of this out and warm this back up. So all you have to do is take out what you need, pop it in a bowl, and you can just quickly put it in the microwave just to get it into a liquid state. So now that we have our butter nice and melted, and it really does smell nutty and delicious, we are going to assemble our filling. So into this bowl with the butter, we're going to add our sugar, and our cinnamon, and we are going to just combine. Just in with a bit more sugar. There we go. All right, and all that is next to do is to take that and put it on that. Okay, so we're putting the topping on, and we're just going to spread this out in a nice layer throughout the entire dough, leaving just a little bit of a margin at either this end or that end, so that when we roll it, that bare end is going to be able to act as our glue to stick the whole thing together. So I'm just going to continue adding my filling here. Okay, so we're gonna begin our roll up. So we're gonna start like this. Take your time, move along the edges, lift this bit up here, and then roll. And just keep doing this until you've rolled the entire thing. So we are all rolled up and ready to go. So I have my cinnamon roll log here. Just going to cut these up into some pieces, put them in a buttered baking dish, and they're going to relax for just a little bit, and then we're going to bake them off. So all the ingredients for the frosting are here: the cream cheese, the brown butter, the powdered sugar, and you could add some vanilla in here. That's optional if you want. So you just have to whip everything together and we're good to go. So into the oven it goes. And there you have it, my brown butter cinnamon rolls recipe. And these buns are hot and fresh out of the oven, just waiting for us to grab one and slather it with some of that brown butter cream cheese frosting. Let's grab one.